Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the 21st of February, 2025. Welcome back. My name is Derek, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing the numerology of this news story we got yesterday, where former Major League Baseball pitcher Scott Sauerbeck, who played for 4 different teams over his 8-year career, died of a heart attack at the age of 53. In this video, we'll explore how this riddle is connected to the upcoming 2025 Major League Baseball season, as well as the commissioner of baseball, Rob Manfred. Now, Scott Sauerbeck was born in the city of Cincinnati, Ohio, a team that he signed with as a minor league player towards the end of his career. And Cincinnati is essentially the birthplace of Major League Baseball, as the Reds are the first team ever to join the league and thus are the oldest active team to this very day. Now, the city of Cincinnati also shares a name with a secret society headquartered in Washington, D.C. called the Society of the Cincinnati. And of course, no secret society riddle is complete without numerology connected to skull and bones, so we'll look at that towards the end as well. On the final day of the past baseball season, the Cincinnati Reds' most famous player of all time, Pete Rose, passed away at the age of 83. And as we go, we'll see how this connects further to the movie Major League. First, let's start out with some numbers that point to the sport of baseball. Now, on this channel, we talk about the language of Gematria. The most basic cipher in this practice is simple English ordinal, which assigns a number to each letter in the alphabet relative to its position. Adding up the digits in the name Scott Sauerbeck gives us a sum of 162. Before making his Major League debut, Scott Sauerbeck was redrafted into the league using the Rule 5 draft. So essentially, the way I understand it is that if you spend a number of years in the minor leagues but don't make it to the major leagues, another team is able to draft you onto their roster. And that happened to Scott Sauerbeck. He was originally drafted by the New York Mets, only to be redrafted by the Pirates in the Rule 5 draft. And there's not many players drafted this way that end up getting a long career, but Sauerbeck was one of them. And notice how Rule 5 draft also has Gematria of 162. Well, the number 162 is very special to the sport of Major League Baseball, which also sums to 162 in the alphabetic order. And this is the number of games in each baseball season. The word baseball on its own sums to 162 in multiple methods. The league's abbreviation MLB also 162 in Sumerian. Now, in a standard full 9-inning Major League Baseball game, there's 54 outs. And the word baseball also has double gematria of 54, matching MLB. When Scott Sauerbeck played in his first ever game in Major League Baseball, it was on the 5th day of the 4th month, April 5th, which can also be written as 4/5. In the standard reduction or Pythagorean form of gematria, where every double-digit number is reduced to a single digit before adding it to the equation, the name Scott Sauerbeck has matching 45 gematria with Major League. In a special method called Latin Gematria, the only cipher I teach not based in the current 26-letter English alphabetic order, Major League also sums to 999. Well, 1999 was the year that Scott Sauerbeck made his major league debut. So before we dive deeper into the major league element, I want to look again at the fact that he was born in the city of Cincinnati. Notice how Cincinnati, Ohio, has matching 141 gematria with the word baseball. You're looking again at Sumerian gematria, which uses the simple alphabetic order but multiplies it by 6. Well, again, the most famous baseball player to play for Cincinnati was Pete Rose. And just think about it. The team's name is the Reds. Pete's last name is Rose. Of course, roses are red. Well, measuring from the death of Pete Rose on September 30th last year to the passing of Scott Sauerbeck on February 18th was 141 days. Pete Rose was often known by his nickname, Charlie Hustle, which in the alphabetic order equals 141. And when Charlie Hustle passed away, it was a span of 141 days after the anniversary of the Society of the Cincinnati. Of course, President George Washington was the general of the Society of the Cincinnati upon its founding. These digits 141 are also found in the birthday of Pete Rose, who was born on 4/14/41, which are very similar to the 141. The name Pete Rose in reduction equals 41 and 40. Sauerbeck's death on February 18th fell 14 weeks and 3 days after his birthday. On top of that, his death was also 143 days after the birthday of baseball's commissioner, Rob Manfred. In the standard alphabetic order, the city of Cincinnati, Ohio equals 143. When Sauerbeck played in his first ever Major League Baseball game, which was on that special Major League date, he was exactly 1,430 weeks old. This was a player picked up in the Rule 5 draft, which also equals 143. Now, part of the reason I'm talking about Rob Manfred is because this man has matching gematria with the city of Cincinnati. In fact, it's a super match, 3 of the 4 base methods, Rob Manfred and Cincinnati. The phrase cardiac arrest also equals 96, like Rob Manfred and Cincinnati. It's being reported that Sauerbeck died of a heart attack, which isn't always technically cardiac arrest, but often is. 96 is also found in the gematria of secrecy and secret. 906 and 96. Cincinnati, in fact, is home to the 283 area code down there in southwestern Ohio. Well, 283 is the Latin gematria of the word secret. Cincinnati's area code is also 513. That is the primary dialing code. And when you write out Scott Sauerbeck and add up the 4 digits in the base methods, notice how you end up with a total sum of 513. Again, syncing up with the area code there. Before we talk about the Society of the Cincinnati a little more, just a couple more syncs with Rob Manfred in Cincinnati. Notice how his full name, Robert Dean Manfred Jr. sums to 92, just like Cincinnati Reds. The word secret, also 92. When Pete Rose died last year, it was on the date leaving 92 days in the year. I often talk about prime numbers on this channel. A prime number is only divisible by 1 and itself. And the 92nd prime number is 479. Well, notice how Scott Sauerbeck was born 4,790 days after baseball commissioner Rob Manfred. Speaking of this 479, measuring from the release date of the film Major League to the date of Sauerbeck's passing was 479 sidereal months. A sidereal month, of course, measuring the orbit of the moon, the amount of time it takes to orbit the Earth in relation to the stars. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're getting this Major League riddle, because think about this. Pete Rose died on the final day of the Major League Baseball season. Down in the description below, you'll find a link to the video I made on his death. Well, a few days later, I made another video on Pete Rose because in the baseball playoffs, a player named Pete Alonso hit the first ever come-from-behind go-ahead home run in the 9th inning of a deciding playoff game in the history of Major League Baseball. And Pete Alonso plays for the New York Mets. Well, Scott Sauerbeck was drafted by the New York Mets. Now, that game where Pete Alonso hit his walk-off home run, or not a walk-off, but the game-winning home run, this was also the final game of broadcasting legend Bob Uecker of the Milwaukee Brewers. And I would later do a video talking about how Bob Uecker was numerically connected to that game. Well, Bob Uecker was the famous commentator from the movie Major League. So now we get the death of another Reds player who is also connected to the Mets, who had the riddle for Pete Alonso and Pete Rose. So I hope I'm making sense in how this is all synchronistically connected. All right, so let's look at how this is synced up to the Society of the Cincinnati. As, once again, Cincinnati was the birthplace of pitcher Scott Sauerbeck. Notice how relief pitcher has Gematria of 530. This relief pitcher passed away at the age of 53. Well, the 53rd prime number is 241. Using the standard alphabetic order, the name Scott William Sauerbeck equals 241. So this guy dies at 53, and his full name is the 53rd prime number. Pitcher Scott Sauerbeck also equals 241. The film Major League sums to 241 with capital letters. Sauerbeck died 241 years after the founding of the Society of the Cincinnati. Also notice how he died 281 days after the Society's anniversary. Cincinnati equals 281 with prime numbers. And these digits are very important to the city of Cincinnati. Notice how the city was incorporated as a town in the year 1802 and was then incorporated as a city in the year 1820. So both of those years have the same three digits in 281, like Cincinnati. Well, if you measure between these two dates of incorporation, we find it was exactly 218 months apart. And now Scott Sauerbeck dies on February 18th. The date written 218. Of course, the word death equals 218. His death on 218 was 218 days before September 23rd. That's the date that Sauerbeck played in his final Major League Baseball game. The word moon equals 218, and of course, the city of Cincinnati, heavily synced to the numerology of the moon, particularly the Metonic cycle. Not going to get too deep into that riddle here, though, because I want to make sure I talk about the skull and bones part of this riddle as well. Of course, when it comes to secret societies, I don't know if any are more notable than this one, aside from Freemasonry, of course. So, we recently had the 120th World Series. That's what concluded last year's MLB season. And cardiac arrest equals 120. And Scott Sauerbeck was the 120th prime number of lunar phases old when he died. Well, this measurement from the end of the World Series to his death was also 3 lunations and 22 days. Using capital letters, where we mix the capital and small letters together, Scott Sauerbeck equals 322. Rob Manfred's full name in reverse also equals 322. This, of course, the number on the skull and bones emblem. Skull and Bones is headquartered at 64 High Street in New Haven, Connecticut. Well, that's interesting because 64 is the product of 32 times 2. And when you write out skull and bones, it equals 604. While secret society equals 640. Scott Sauerbeck was born during Brown lunation 604. He then suffered a fatal heart attack during Brown lunation 1263. Well, 263 is the gematria of Order of the Skull and Bones, Skull and Crossbones, and Masonic. Those who watch my channel are familiar with this fact, that in 2023, Yale University turned 322 years old. Measuring from that date, October 9th of 2023, to the date of Sauerbeck's death, was 1 year, 4 months, and 9 days. 149 is the ordinal gematria of Skull and Bones. Now, the number 1409 is also the 223rd prime number, connecting to Skull and Crossbones 223. Measuring again, from the date of Sauerbeck's final Major League appearance to the date of his death, he died 220 months and 3 weeks after that game. His death was also 149 days after the game's anniversary. So we get both of these numbers in this measurement. Sauerbeck died 223 days before Commissioner Rob Manfred's birthday. When he played his final major league game, it was 223 years after the founding of the Society of the Cincinnati. 223 is the 48th prime number, and his death fell 223 years and 48 days after the town of Cincinnati was incorporated. And then he threw for 4 different teams in 8 different seasons, like 48. Notice how Sauerbeck had birth numerology of 110 and 38. His death fell 1 month and 10 days, or a span of 38 days before the first game of the upcoming Major League Baseball season, which starts on March 27th, back in Tokyo, Japan, for the first series of the year. Well, the digits 110 and 38 are very connected to this man. Notice how the word death equals 38 and 110. Pitcher equals 110 and 38. Rule 5 draft, skull and crossbones, secret, all with this gematria as well. Another interesting note is from Yale's 322nd anniversary to the date of Sauerbeck's death was also a span of exactly 1 year and 19 weeks. Of course, we all know the importance of the 119 and the 911. But I point this out here because Scott Sauerbeck was born on November 9th, 11/9. So that'll do it for this video. Once again, if you check the links in the description below, you'll find my related videos talking about Pete Rose, Pete Alonso hitting the home run in Bob Uecker's final game. Uecker, of course, would pass away a couple months later. So yeah, check the links down below. Also, if you'd like to help support the work, you'll find a link to that, which will also supercharge your Gematria calculator with various tools and functions. All right, everybody. That'll do it for today. Thanks again for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, and do all that goody-good YouTube stuff. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you all next time. See ya.